So while that centre is drying, I'm just going to finish off these outside bits down here. So I'm going to turn my image around and turn my reference image around as well. So we're going to be finishing the bits outside the petal we painted before, these bits here. They're all in the background, so we don't want them too sharp and we want them dull, not too bright. So use your colour isolator, see what your colour is, and it's a lilac-y peach and some of the greys that we used before. So I'll wet it. And I'm going to wet it carefully to the outside of that petal, that other petal that we painted before. So it's just a nice curved shape. And even though it's not all darker behind that one, on my painting I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So I'm wetting this all now, right up to the top, and I'm even catching the edge of that dark background so it bleeds down a little bit. So that's there. I'm going to go right down and again to this petal here. Move your head so that you can see whether you've wetted all or not. Right, so I'm going to start with the shadow colour. So I've still got some here, I just need to wet it again from before. I'll add a little wee bit more blue to make it more blue. And I'm going to start at the left hand side to the top. And I'm just going to detail, I'm just going to create a little shadow line so I can see where that petal goes to. Then I'm going to sweep up here, maybe put a little bit more blue. You can see what colour I've got, it's quite strong. I'll just knock it back a little bit and add a little bit more blue. Probably too much blue. So I'll pull in some of that pink. So that's a little bit strong. So I'll just dilute it a little bit. I'll just move this so that it's on camera. Sorry if it's at a funny angle, but I've moved my, I've moved the reference image so you can see it. So we're starting up here. So I'm going to go like so. You can see that little sweep there and a sweep. Now this is not exactly the same as this one, but it's near enough. And then I'm going to do a sweep up there. And I'll just lift a little bit. My paper's a bit wet, so I'm just going to lift that bit there, just to slow it down a bit. Then I'll put some pink here where there isn't pink, but that's okay. Who's to know? So I'll just shadow that and a sweep up there. So that's that other leaf, other petal. Then I'm going to rinse off and pick up some of this Potter's Pink mix for this bit here. So we'll come down there, and here is pink. So I'm just going over the top of what I've done with the shadow. And I'm just going to make that look like another petal there. And then I'm going to form this one here by going over the top of it, and with a dried off brush start softening this edge and that edge, and then I'm going to form the bottom of it. Go a little bit more blue and soften the top edge, and then into the pink. So you're just interpreting the colour and the value depth. So I'm just going to form that, and that comes out here like so. I'm not going quite to where I did that. I'll just push it back a little bit just to keep it tidy. and I leave a light bit. And you can see what I'm doing here. Just putting some of that darker colour in there in the gap. So I've just worked my way down from here down to here. And I'll just soften both ends of that because I don't really want any more colour out here. So just keep the top of that petal nice and smooth. And take it right into there. And I'll just let that go off a little bit. Here I am here. And I'm just going to soften this edge. And maybe I'll soften that one too. Just with a little tip, not a big wide soften. And I'll drop a little bit more dark across there. That's there. And I'll just make sure that that top of that petal is formed nicely. And that's all we need to do there. So it doesn't matter if it's not the same as that, it's just some petals in the background. So you can use, if you've got too heavy-handed, you can use a brush like this, or a round brush if you haven't got a brush like this, and do some lifting. So I'll just lift over where I've left that highlight there. And where else? Or maybe I'll lift a little bit more off that top petal there. It didn't really work. And I'll lift next to that. Whilst we're here, I'll do a little sweep of shadow colour. Sorry, that was just a train going past my house. I'll do a little shadow colour on this petal here, which we haven't actually done anything on. So I'm just going to do a little sweep. It's very dry, like that. Then with a clean brush, I'm just going to touch it there. And I'm going to touch that edge of where I've just painted as well, so it softens up. And I'm going to touch this edge up here. So in essence, I'm wetting that petal after I've put that little sweep on it. And there's a bit more here too. No paint on brush. So this just rolls it, and at that top edge was a bit wet, so I'll just lift a bit off. And put a little bit more down here. So that just tidies that one up. We're nearly there. Down here, I've got a little lost soul, hasn't had any attention. So what I'll do is I'll just wet it. This is all completely dry now. This is a petal rolling up that way. This is petal rolling over this way. So I'll just wet it. Just to the edge of the petal, including those dark bits over it. And then I'm just going to go in with a little scrubber. And I'm just going to soften it. So I've dipped it in the water and I've brought it up here, and I'm just going to soften the edge. Just a little scrub. And you can do this with a round brush or a synthetic brush. And just a little scrub over there. And I'm not going to blot it off. I'm just going to leave it like that. And those colours will drift over. And I could just drop even a little bit of colour along that top edge just to get it to bleed over. You know, roll it over. So that's some of that colour, or a shadow version of it, just onto that top edge. And that'll just roll it over. And then out to the side there is a darker piece. So I'll just pick up a dark. And I'll just mix them up here. A little bit more blue. So it's a dark purpley red. Put a bit more quin red. When you mix blue with the quin red, you get quite a plummy colour as opposed to a purpley colour. So I'm just going to go in there and just define this. So that petal's coming around. So I'm just going to define that petal there and the bottom of that one there. Put it in its background in essence. Plenty of colour on there. And it goes almost to that little guy we just had a little faff around there. So whilst I'm here with this dark in my hand, I see that there's another bit up here which is untouched. So I'll do this at the same time. It's just a suggestion of another petal. I mean, it might even be covered with the background layer. And then up here, this is probably still a bit damp. I'll put a bit more blue in it and pick up a little bit of that blacker colour. And I'm just going to put this little bit of background in here, which goes down to the, oh, and here. So a stroke there. And then here. And we're going to form these petals and put that little bit in there. And because I want this to go backwards, I'm going to use a big brush that's really dried off, and I'm just going to touch, just catch the edge, soften that edge, turn it round so it suits me, and same thing again, wet it, dry, just touch this edge and let it run onto there, and same with here, just onto that and just onto this one, but I will leave that little fiddly bit a little bit sharper, and you see it just pushes it back. And it doesn't matter if it, see it's blurring across quite nicely, that's fine. Why didn't I do that here? Because this is further forward, but maybe I'll do it down here. I'll just touch this edge and this one because it's rolling up, but I'll leave that one. So we haven't done this bit here yet. We'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll push it back because we want this bit here a little bit further forward. This is finished. It's finished there. And we'll